Alrighty, welcome everyone to another governance call for Celo. I'm Jan, I'll be your moderator for today. And yeah, let's get started. So this is governance call 16. We have 3 items on the agenda. The first one is CGP 50. Is Martin here? Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Yeah, I made it.
Nice. All right, let me just click on that. Alrighty, Martin, you wanna give an give an overview of contract release 6?
Yeah, sure. So this is a pretty routine contracts release proposal. The C-Labs contracts team has been working on all sorts of, in this case, mostly minor changes. They are ready to release. They have been audited. There is a link to Open Zeppelin's audit down on the bottom of the CGP. We are ready to release these changes on, create the proposal on Tuesday. We've already deployed on testing environments, and everything is looking good. I can go over maybe, if you click on the release notes, we can go over the changes real quick what happened here. First of all, we've had CIP8, which is this way of accessing off-chain storage. And this was previously implemented on top of CIP3. So CIP3 allowed you to have a link to this external JSON that kind of specified a bunch of different metadata about your account. And one of those things was specified by CIP8, which is this link to farther external storage. What this meant for application developers is if they wanted to access the CIP8 storage, they needed to make 2 network hops to actually get to that, because first they would have to query the blockchain for the CIP3 information, then parse that JSON that they get from there to then query the CIP8 URL. We've added kind of a short circuit to this, where now all that's needed is we allow users to store that CIP8 URL in the account smart contract. So only a single network hop is necessary for application developers to access this. The second thing is there was a tiny issue in the locked Celo contract, in that a slasher could be a non-locked gold account, but slash rewards are kind of denominated in locked Celo. So an address that is not an account on the account smart contract could not receive locked Celo. And so that Celo would kind of end up being lost and unredeemable. Now that it's required that the slasher has an open account with locked Celo, so they're able to receive this. And finally, the last thing is just a very technical detail, where libraries had this get version number function, which is unnecessary on library smart contracts. So that was removed, and that changed the bytecode of a bunch of libraries, which forces a kind of a change of bytecode to any dependent contracts, which is why you're seeing a bunch of contracts being updated, but the update is merely repointing to a different version of these libraries. And it's just a patch version number that doesn't change any behaviors or APIs.
Cool.
Yep.
Awesome.
Happy to take any questions if there's time.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, there's time for questions. Anyone has any questions about the new CR6 release?
My only question was just about the timing. You said this would likely be proposed on Tuesday, and then voting would be occurring presumably later next week. Great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions? Alrighty, we can then move on.
Oh, maybe one more comment. We've due to some kind of just scheduling issues we've had in the past few months, This release is a little later than would be the usual release cadence. And release 7 is actually right around the corner. So we're doing release 6 right now, and we might be announcing release 7 relatively soon as well, because that is also almost ready for deployment as well. So just a heads up on that.
Do
Alrighty.
we have the reports from the release notes from the auditors, so that people that want to take a look about what's going on in release 7 can already do?
That one is not published yet,
right.
but we will be finalized fairly soon.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Okay. Alrighty. Any more final comments, questions, concerns? People want to talk about life in general? Nada? Alrighty. Let's move on then. So yeah, our CR6 release will be deployed on Tuesday, proposed on Tuesday, and that's when we're gonna, gather all community people to start voting under CGP 50. Okay, next one, CGP 48, reserve gift policy. Slobodan and Volpe, are y'all here?
Yeah, I am.
All right.
Do you want to go ahead, Slobodan, or shall I?
You can go on. I can jump in if something comes up.
Okay, cool. So as you may know, we have many projects on Celo. This project on Celo, many have issued tokens, and also some protocols are redirecting a part of the profits to the Celo reserve in form of a gift without asking for anything in exchange. The reserve, to give you an overview, is a smart contract holding a bunch of assets that are supposed to back the Celo stable tokens issued. So any asset that is sent to the reserve helps with the stability mechanism, making more trustworthy and more collateralization ratio. And this is my personal guess, but that will be like some sort of motivation of the projects building out Celo. If they donate a little of their tokens, then the stable currencies that they are used actually become safer and giving that positive loop. What we are proposing is to hold these gifted tokens. And also, by the way, I know of many projects that already have the allocation and are ready to distribute these gifts like immediately after this gets approved. So we are proposing that gifts get accepted into one multi-sig that is already in control of the reserve. If I'm not mistaken, I think this is a reserve spender that is able to take Celo in a limited way. I think there's a cap per day, how much you can take out in order to do rebalancing operations off chain. And then we outline a clear policy about in which scenarios we will be liquidating those gifts and actually how much. We are proposing basically a per rata liquidation rate, so that if we have to liquidate 1% of the total gift balance, we're gonna just liquidate, for example, 1% of each of the projects that we have there. And we suggest a minimum threshold that is specified in the proposal too. And also, we are not going to accept is a hard word, not actually accept, like gifts with less than 50K in liquidity are just not going to be considered, because we want to avoid spamming of the reserve so that anyone will be able to just send one token and then show up in the reserve website or reports or whatever, saying that they're part of the reserve and prevent that spamming. And also realistically, if it doesn't have more than 50K in liquidity, it basically makes not much sense that we consider that as a hedge in case the reserve needs to be liquidated. I see we have a question. Yes, across all decks, that's correct. That is tricky, you know, because liquidity is dynamic and it change from time to time. So 50K as a minimum threshold seems reasonable to me. Anything else that I have forgotten, Slobodan?
I think that's pretty much it. I think just the address is not the reserve spender address, but this other multisig that actually also holds the CMCO2 tokens.
Right. Yeah, right. Yeah, on-chain I think is listed as other reserve addresses or something like that.
Yeah.
Can I scroll down a little bit? Yes.
Define a little bit. I'm all the way at the end.
Oh, no. Just wanted to check if I was missing something. This proposal also defines a collateralization ratio, a new number. So if you are not familiar, we already have a collateralization ratio. If you enter solarreserve.org, you're going to see that the number is displayed there. It's basically the total amount of value in reserve. The total amount in dollar amount of stable tokens issued divided by the total reserve assets, actually the other way around, sorry. Total reserve assets divided by the total stable tokens outstanding. That's radio. Today that gives you a number something like 3. And we define another number called, I think we call something an extended ratio that includes all these gifts. So you can see how much over collateralized the reserve gets using these gifts. And the threshold for liquidation is set to 200%. So for example, right now, those tokens will not be liquidated on chain. And that's it. Cool. I have a question, Ronan. So liquidation can only happen if exchange goes below 2x. Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, I guess it was interesting to me. Nobody really commented on the 2x. If I was donating tokens to the Celo reserve, the thing I'd be worried about is once the reserve hits that threshold, my tokens are going to get sold. So there's going to be downward pressure on my token price once that reserve threshold is crossed. So I would think from a donor standpoint, you probably want that maybe to be like low. I don't know, 2x is pretty reasonable to me. So if there was nobody complaining on the forum, like, then great.
I mean, I guess at the end of the day, that's up to donors. So if they want to raise any concerns, this could be a good place, or the forum. It kind of gets a self-fulfilling thing, because you know, if Celo is under pressure, and you know that if it crosses a certain threshold, then the reserve is going to actually go and buy Celo from the open market at point of the reserve, you are less likely to short Celo or to dump your Celo because there's these mechanisms that's going to trigger. So each in normal situation, each should act like a balancing act and make it actually less likely that it will hit that collateralization ratio.
Agreed.
And it's also not like, you know, once it falls below 200% that it's immediately selling all the gifts. It just like introduces the possibility. And for example, if markets are like, you know, fluctuating around 200%, then it probably wouldn't really make sense to start selling gifts. But at some point you need to start. And as Walker said, some lead time before that seems important.
Okay, cool. Any more questions on CGP? What is it? 48. One thing to note that this proposal doesn't require any code changes. It's more like a proposal, like an intention kind of proposal without any modification to the core contracts as well. And it would only be applied once the proposal passes.
Yeah, setting up policy rather than changing the code.
Cool. All right, if there's no more questions, maybe we can move on to the next one.
I think others, yes.
All righty. Anytime. All right, CGP 49, Celo Real Liquidity Incentive. It's Mila and Nikhil. I think Mila's here, but I don't know if Nikhil is here. But you know, we can kick it off anyways.
Yeah, it's not here. Okay, cool. So the idea here is to have some allocation of Celo from the community fund to encourage liquidity incentives. And these incentives, they could be, for instance, liquidity incentives for Celo users depositing Celo Real into liquidity pools and protocols such as Uniswap, Symmetric, Mobius, Sushi, Moola, and so on and so forth. There was a very interesting conversation at the forum in which some users suggested that we add some allocation to Dust, right? So like wallets and whoever is integrating with Celo Real, they don't have to
Mila,
pay for
sorry
gas
to
fees.
interrupt you, but it's kind of difficult to understand you, and I think it might be your headphones. I don't know. I am the only one.
Yeah, I think I hear a static maybe.
Yeah.
But let's try again maybe.
Is this better?
No. Yeah, it looks like so. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds better. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So the idea here is to allocate Celo from the community fund to encourage liquidity incentives for like different uses, such as like depositing Celo Real into liquidity pools and in the protocols of Uniswap, Symmetric, Mobius, Moola, and everybody that we know. I was just flagging that we submitted this in the forum, and there were some suggestions to allocate some of these incentives towards like Dust for wallets or whoever needs some incentives not to use this with, not to have to pay for gas, and also incentivize the adoptions of these technologies, which I find it's a great idea. If you like this and could suggest, or you can notice that in the fourth paragraph, we left the amount open to be discussed in this call. So we were wondering something around from $1 million US to, I don't know, maybe up to $5 billion US. And the risks that were possibly flagged for this is, of course, liquidity dropping after the incentives are gone, and this being needed for other strategic initiatives. So I would like to like pause here and maybe hear a little bit from you guys.
I have one question, maybe more generally, like are currently different proposals competing for community fund Celo, or is this one pretty much the only one? Do you know, Mila?
As I'm aware, for Celo Real, this is the focus one. I'm not aware of any other.
Okay, so essentially like the 9 million Celo that are in there are just not being used at the moment, or there are no proposals to use them at the moment, essentially.
For this specific main and with a name to boost the third stable asset of Celo, no. I'm also checking the forum to see if I find anything.
I mean, I think Ocelot is pulling from that fund, right? Yaz?
Yeah, we're pulling from that fund, but like the way Ocelot works is we don't take, like, we have a 3 million Celo allocation, but we never took the entire 3 million Celo to our multi-sig. We just withdraw as needed, kind of like how the Celo Community Fund does it. And that way, the majority of the fund stays in the community fund. And yeah, otherwise, I mean, I don't want that responsibility of having 3 million Celo in one multi-sig address. I feel like it's not the way to go.
So Slobodan, I guess there's a good few things pulling from that 9 million, like CCF as well, Ocelot, probably other stuff. But in terms of being uniquely focused on C-Real, I'm not aware of any other proposal. There is a proposal, I don't know if it passed yet, around Dust for bridging for optics.
Yeah.
I don't know if that passed, but that's the most similar I can think of.
Yeah, thanks for the overview. Thanks.
I mean,
Cool.
some general comments I have on this proposal. I think, first of all, it's great to see proposals around C-Real. So I like that, Mila, and I think we need to pay attention to growing adoption. I think Dust sounds like a great idea. Anywhere we can do Dust, I would vote on that all day, even to provide like companies that are offering wallets, Dust on their users. It just makes a lot of sense because it's very cheap and it makes a better user experience. Broadly on liquidity incentives, I would like to see more data from the community on how well they have worked so far, both from DeFi for the people and also community incentives. I've been talking a bit with Patrick on it and Renee. I don't get the sense we have a clear picture of whether there's perseverance in liquidity after the period where we're paying rewards. I'm generally skeptical about big rewards just because I haven't seen strong evidence on any, DeFi platform, but I'm kind of open to it if somebody had a good case for it. So there are some general comments.
Martin, sorry to put you on the spotlight, but you're also the person, working with stablecoins. And would you have any feedback on that? Because we didn't touch base.
Yeah, although what Ronan says, like, it's a concern I also have from the purely like economic thing, but I also do think that it's a tool to onboard people to the ecosystem, because you're down in Brazil and you haven't played with DeFi, and then you see an opportunity that your currency and using as a tool for liquidity, you can get a high IPR, then you may start researching then what Celo it's all about. So for a classical financial product, like I said, like incentivized liquidity of bonds, like probably, once the incentives right out, then the market is gonna correct and that's it. But I would say like with new products, especially in these emerging markets, are probably going to have like campaigns in their own language for the first time ever. We should do everything we can do to make a splash. And it at the end of the day is going to be Celo that is going to distribute to community members and hopefully new community members. And even if they're institutions, they are going to be more comfortable maintain stable assets in a relatively small market. Well, not small, but compared with the US dollars, small. So I think the long-term externalities of this can be worth it, but obviously this is some sort of experiment, and we are talking about a very small amount in regards of what the whole Celo community fund is worth.
I like what you said, and if I may add just a little bit of more color and context in the local scenario. So in 2 weeks from now, we're going to be hosting ETH Rio. I don't know if like all of you are going to come or some of you and so on and so forth. And I think allowing for the experience of like the existing crypto community to see, unstable in a country like Brazil in action with different use cases, because as we have discussed and you are following, there's a card coming up soon. There are wallets that you can already pay for your electricity bill, rent, and so on and so forth, and also do DeFi. It's something very interesting. So I totally support what Martin said in terms of like this being educational and awareness also for the community. I think the magic is going to like make the math, you know, where what we put in terms of incentives matches what we expect in terms of results, which is a greater awareness in the market. Maybe what we need is also to think about like some sort of, you know, campaign or the partners who could be, you know, incentivized to try out this within the community. You know, maybe this could be a joint effort. Can you agree once this is passed that, you know, everybody who is in here or that has the businesses, or we are going to activate all of the dApps, like 300 dApps, to post something about it and say, hey, this is happening right now and we're allocating funds because we want you to know, new users of Brazil, but also like the wider community of Celo. It's a huge effort, you know, to make this happen. And there are over 6 cash in and cash out options here. And I think the whole user journey starts with like acquiring some crypto, right? Maybe trading, maybe putting into DeFi, and then finally spending, because this is what you can do with unstable assets. So I just wanted to flag this.
Yeah. So one way I think about it is, let's say that it's $5 million worth that we're talking about here in incentives. I think about one option is we could put that towards liquidity pools, where I think a lot of the rewards probably go back to legacy participants in the ecosystem. The other option is, and I'm just making this up, but let's say we gave 5 million CUSD to somebody like Mila, who then distributes it in 50K CUSD blocks to 100, you know, startups or entrepreneurs in Brazil. Like, I would probably take the second option every day of just giving out 150K USD checks to startups in Brazil, because I feel like that maybe gets more done. So that's kind of the framework I'm thinking of. And I'll just add that CCF, I think right now, the Celo Community Fund, which is a portion of the community fund listed here on the screen, that I think is going through a change of stewards. It would be nice to have somebody with Portuguese language as a steward. It would be nice to have, you know, a portion of that fund focused on Brazil so that we can support the C-Real. And I just think giving out these, like 50K probably goes a long way in Brazil for an early stage entrepreneur. So that's kind of my framework when I compare giving money to existing liquidity incentives, which I'm not really sure help that much on the ground. But
I do think we can do some sort of combination. Like in the short run, as liquidity builds out, even a very small amount of incentives generate like high yields until the market kind of stabilizes. So we actually don't need that much value to make like some sort of a splash in local market from the purely liquidity perspective. But I fully support the idea I just came out with, Ronan.
I'm just like waiting to see if David is going to finish typing, because he's in the middle of a sentence.
However,
wait for it.
Yeah.
So I've been tracking this conversation, and I agree that paying to bootstrap liquidity with incentives is the industry standard mechanism right now for priming the pump, but they seem to disappear almost right away. And I think the reason for that is that there's speculation and there's yield farming, but there's not any real usage of crypto, at least not here in the US yet. That maybe isn't the case in Brazil. So the idea that you might be able to kickstart some interest and activity around an event is fascinating. But I think Ronan's point around doing it just by incentivizing liquidity providers may not be, that might be a myopic focus. So I'd be open-minded about the approach.
If I may interject, I think you're right, David, and Ronan, like liquidity is a dance, right? You incentivize people with liquidity pool. People, you know, bridge their asset to a network, they add liquidity, they get all that token. Once liquidity dries up, they move on to the next network. And like the approach with Olympus DAO initially was a better way to combat it, where the protocol controlled value is an approach to incentivize long-term liquidity. Olympus had problems, but Tarun's paper on Monday kind of addresses how it can improve long-term liquidity. sustainability and stuff. So like obviously I'm like, you know, opinionated on this. I think like liquidity pool isn't sustainable. It's good short term to boost liquidity, but it's not sustainable long term. Yeah, let me try to find Tarun's paper. Hold on. It's actually a really good paper. A lot of math in it, and I don't understand like the mathematics too much, but it's actually pretty good.
I'm just thinking here about like a mix and match. The two things that have been discussed and not losing sight of what we're going to have happening here in like shortly 2 weeks. And just to clarify what you can do with the Celo Real in Brazil from like a local perspective. Wallets here, they are very different from like global wallets. Global wallets, I would call them like trading wallets, right? And then you have a category. This is not me trying to like put things into boxes, but then you have a Lora, which is something that you can use for DeFi. In Brazil, we have this second type of like wallet that is integrated with the banking system. So you can cash in and cash out very fast from your bank. It takes around, I made a video like showing how to pay like rent out of my bank account in 1 minute and how that works here. So this is something that can be done. However, the awareness on how to do this and also like pay for something for an account. Rona, I need somebody to scratch off my personal information and then I send it over to you because like everything is in there. But as long as somebody stretches out for me, I'm happy to share that. And also to do a demo with you, just like call me someday, whatever. So, and this is something that I would like to create awareness for the greater community of Celo. But now focusing back here in Brazil, building this journey, and we have discussed this like a long way of everything that you can do with a stable asset in these 3 different pillars, which is like trading, real world use cases, spending in a card that is coming very fast to, like through a partner, and also doing DeFi is something very important, but we don't have like mechanisms. So I think a mix and match of like one supporting the local startups and the local ecosystem of like wallets and DeFi projects with this liquidity and thus is something very important to be done. Besides also like sponsoring them to start their operations. And the reason for that is because there's a lot of money in Brazil right now. Access to capital is not a problem here for the good startups. They're swimming in money. It's a more of like making them aware that Celo is the place where they could be building the solutions because it's so much aligned with what they want. So this is just one thing that I wanted to flag as well.
Okay. Any more feedback based on what Mila said? Seems like capital is not a problem in Brazil. It's more about making people aware about Celo Real. Come on, folks, talk.
Ronan, Brazil is gigantic. Addressing your comments, sorry, Brazil is gigantic. 80% of all startups, they're located in 2 cities, Rio de Janeiro and São Paulo, but only 10% of the population lives in the city. So this is the size of the situation. The startups and the evolution, they're just happening here. And there's like so many biomes and things to be explored and so on and so forth throughout the Brazilian territory. So another approach could be, of course, to direct these incentives outside this traditional Rio and São Paulo like bundle, you know. So you were saying, Martin.
I'm just asking, what is going to be next steps for you after this feedback and with this proposal in general?
So I really wanted to like obtain feedback on one, the size of this possible grant. And secondly, if it seemed reasonable to have this type of allocation to incentivize here. And the feedback that I'm getting is, well, this seems appropriate. It also seems that the community would be interested in further developing other opportunities, other supporting actions towards the startups in the local scenario, which I find it's amazing. But I haven't yet heard about a possible number that would make us all comfortable. So upon some directioning also in this, what I could do is one, amend the proposal, right? To say this is what's going to be covered for liquidity in general, and start working in a way to bring more startups that will further enhance the mission of Celo closer to us. The one thing that is going to happen, the Celo camp enrollment is open until the 22nd, and although a lot of startups here, they have access to capital, they don't have access, or they don't know how to build their business just yet, because this is such a hot market that there's money flowing around, but not necessarily people knowing how to apply this. So this could be something that we could work actively on. But I would really like to hear some feedback on the value that you think it would be appropriate for a liquidity incentive.
Yeah, I mean, references for value, I guess you can look at what previously was used to incentivize CUSD and CUR, and you can also look at the current liquidity size of C-Real. You can look at the reserve size of C-Real. I think there's maybe about $1 million USD worth of C-Real in the reserve right now. So, order of magnitude, if you do something of that size, you're probably going to have an impact. I don't know, there's some random thoughts.
I like that. Maybe doubling, because we have been getting feedback from especially exchanges to list. They say, well, there's no volume, I have a pipeline, and sometimes it's something that could be interesting to quickly develop. Yes, Nick, you just brought a point. Real right now has lower inflation than dollars. And this is funny, but just in this month, the dollar price dropped 40 cents. Considering our currency, it was 5.6 reais for $1. Now it's around 5. So if you're a clever investor, you're probably switching the way you can from dollars to reais. And this could be said to a lot of the influencers out there. Or you could all start investing everything you have now and not in Celo dollars, and I would see liquidity fly high. So it's also a point there.
And also, thinking about liquidity incentives and how they works in the short and long run. Now thinking as Brazil is onboarding to this new stack, and if people want to make a swap, I guess they are expecting liquidity there. So it can really help people starting to land on the ecosystem with minimum slippage. Although even though if the liquidity dries out after the incentives are in, if it was able to provide a smooth experience for the people onboarding for the first time now, I think it's actually something that will be worthwhile. And Camila, what do you think about the idea from Conan about providing personalized grants to these companies or entrepreneurs in Serial or Celo for what's worth?
Just one suggestion, maybe of course a little bit of grant, but support. If these founders had a dedicated support, imagine some developers or some people who understand about protocol economics available, with regular office hours, I really think we could get attraction. More than putting money into these things, maybe this money can be put into structures, small hubs in the cities, 5, one for each macro region in Brazil, that the interpreters, they will know there's Wi-Fi there, there are developers there, or there is a meetup where they can talk. So I think this makes a lot of sense. And after this process, of course, we can have some grants being distributed. but this community effect and the presence of developers in the local ecosystem is a must.
Mhm. So these are all really great ideas, and I think there's no reason not to implement them as part of the proposal. What I would suggest is maybe we have 14 minutes left. I don't know if we're going to resolve all the conversation in 14 minutes. We have the discussion forum, so I would recommend, based on the feedback that we're getting, maybe we update your proposal to reflect all these different ideas and continue the conversation there. Not that we're ending the call right now, but I'm just, mindful of time. But yeah, I just want to put that out there. All right, the other thing is maybe like nailing down what would be a great amount to be allocated from the community fund, which I think, if we take the discussion to the forum, it would make sense. And let me see if let me show you all the forum.
Do you have an opinion, Mila, about the amount?
Oh.
I like the idea of 1 million now because it's going to double what we have and it will allow us to measure the impact this has in the business.
Okay.
$1 million, yeah.
Alrighty. I mean, we more than have that in the community fund, so it shouldn't be a problem. And we want people to use the community fund a lot more. Okay. So yeah, let's finalize what exactly the money will be used for. I think there was a debate over deploying it to different hubs versus liquidity incentives. If it's going to be more used for supporting different hubs within Brazil, I would recommend we modify the title so that it reflects what the new proposal would be for the Celo Real. The other thing is I'll be working with Nikhil and Mila on is trying to get like a multi-sig going, and I think that would be really useful for deployment of a large capital and stuff. Maybe like a 2 or 3 multi-sig would be sufficient with Mila on it, and maybe people from Brazil within the community fund. But yeah, that's more like janitor work for later. We still have 11 minutes. If any other any other ideas that we, for the proposal, feel free to, jump in now. Otherwise, maybe we can just end it early so we can just refine the proposal offline.
Yes, I just want to add, I think it's great we're doing the extra reserve with Slobodan. Like, obviously markets are choppy, and I think it's just good to have these extra things that buffer the reserve. There's a proposal out there as well around last resort minting. That one is probably less straightforward to hammer out, but I'm glad that we're talking about it, and I hope it gets done fairly soon as well, because adding resilience makes sense.
The last resort minting, is there a CGP for it?
There's a forum post. I don't know if there's a CGP.
It's just a discussion at this point, I think.
No, it's only a discussion. Okay, cool. Alrighty, that makes sense. Okay. Any other final comments about this proposal, the other 2 proposals?
Maybe just on the reserve gift proposal, like what would be the next steps now? Can this move into voting or?
Yeah, so I would recommend we batch them. So next week, Martin is going to be submitting the CR6 proposal. If you feel that your proposal for CGP, was it 48? I don't remember, but for that CGP, if it's final and it's a final form, I think both they can usually submit it on Tuesday, along with Martin submitting their CR6 release one. And everyone will be alerted. Don't worry about it. And hopefully everyone votes on time.
Cool.
Okay. I think that's it. Okay. Mila, and Nikhil, do you feel like you got enough feedback so we can work offline on the forum discussion post, which is right here, and take it from there. And Ronan, feel free to also jump in on that forum post, to capture your points and stuff, and we can update the proposal and go from there. Sweet. Alrighty. And with that, I think we should be good to end the call. All right. So let me stop sharing first. And then alrighty. And with that, thank you all for attending. Another awesome governance call. A lot of great feedback, a lot of great proposals. And yeah, we'll catch up with you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Take care.